Good morning everybody, wherever you happen to be on this fine planet that we call home, that we have to call home, that we have no choice about calling home, indeed. Right, you are on a live safari in the morning here in the wilds of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. And just before I introduce the plethora of skills that are bringing you this live safari, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what that actually means. So, you've all probably heard of the Kruger National Park, world famous park, but the Kruger is part of a much larger conservation area called the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, which is 3.5 million hectares, or about 8 million acres, of wilderness wonderland here between three countries. And it's called a peace park or transfrontier conservation area, which means it traverses a number of borders. So it's 2.2 million hectares of South Africa, about 1.5 million, I'm going to run out of hectares here, about 900,000 hectares in Mozambique, and the remainder north into Zimbabwe, into a place called Gonarazu. And that's why it's called a transfrontier conservation area, and its name is the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, basically. Yes, so that's where we are. Marvelous to have you along. We are on a little section on the far western sector called Djuma. It's about 900 hectares, and we also traverse just to the west of here 600 hectares of a place called Arathusa. There are commercial safari lodges on the two places where we traverse, but we are operating with just no guests, only you, our wonderful viewers. And of course, on the back of this vehicle we have Viam on camera. Good morning, Viam. Viam was commenting at how warm and balmy it feels this morning. It certainly does. It's about 14 degrees apparently Celsius. It feels warmer than that to me. About 57 degrees Fahrenheit apparently. I would put it at least 16 degrees. Anyway, it's not very cold. Viam unusually is not dressed in a variety of warming things, including his grandmother's blanket, which he likes to bring along on game drive, which is quite disconcerting sometimes. On the other vehicle, hieing to the west at great speed, is Brent Leo Smith, and on camera with him, the inimitable Andrew the Aardvark. They are going to see if they can find tracks of the Birmingham boys. They were apparently calling out there yesterday evening, so hopefully he will have some luck. There are some buffalo in that area too, so we do know that the Birminghams like to eat buffalo. Tasty things for hungry young male lions are buffalo, and so maybe he will have some luck. I have come into the place where I have had no luck indeed for the last 2 days. I have been looking for Kurula, the queen of Djuma, an 11-year-old female leopard, and I'm hoping desperately to see her. Brent did actually manage to find her on foot yesterday, but it was so thick that it was impossible for him to get a vehicle in there. So we're going to see if we can't get a view of her. Who knows? I hope we'll be lucky. She certainly owes me one, I feel. And lastly, before we get going, in the final control room we have Nikki Austin back from leave, and Tara is also there, and Jess leaves us today to be replaced by Kirsty. So there's a whole lot of different things going on around the place. You are most welcome. Please interact with us while we drive for the next 3 hours. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv. We love to hear from you. We want to hear from you. And if you happen to be a new viewer, perhaps you've stumbled over this website, please feel free to talk to us. Anything you like. We'd like to hear from you, and I'm more than happy to answer any queries you have within reason, specifically about this area. Okay, on we go. Viam, are you ready?
Yeah, well.
Okay, good. Right. So, we've come into this area where Kurula was yesterday. I'm going to attempt to try and find her tracks. If we don't find the tracks, I will walk basically straight into where she was yesterday. Leopards do move quite a lot in the night, so I suspect she's probably not exactly where she was yesterday. But she may have been lucky and made a kill, in which case she will be around. Bumpy roads, so don't spill your coffee. Then where's your coffee today?
Right here.
Oh, Viam does actually bring coffee on drive. There it is. He's now having a sip. He also normally brings a sort of picnic of junk food along with him too.
Yeah, bananas there.
And just, is that all you've got? A banana? Oh dear. And just in keeping with our sort of leopard tracking, there was a magnificent sighting yesterday which you had with Scott, and perhaps some of you, I'm not sure if you were all watching at that time of the day, but Scott had an incredible sighting of Sindile and Shadow, Sindile being Karula's grandson, and therefore obviously his mother Shadow being Karula's daughter. And he had them interacting and playing with each other, and she actually couldn't find him for a while and was calling apparently quite desperately around the Treehouse Dam area. And I'm extremely jealous of that sighting, I must say. When you see me looking over the side of the vehicle, what it means is that I'm looking for tracks on the road. It's not because I have a twitch. And I look to the right, of course, because I can't see over the left. That's Liam's job. And I believe also that Sindile, or at least Shadow, was found with the help of a giraffe. A lovely old bull giraffe who's been hanging around that area for the last few days. Alright, so while we look through here, we're going to head across to the inimitable, irascible and highly enthusiastic Brent Leo Smith. He is on the trail, I hope, of some lions, and so we'll pop across to him, get an update, and I will hopefully see you later with some good news. See you just now.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Brent, and I'm going to be your guide on the sunrise safari, and Andrew is our cameraman today, and I'm sure James has dealt with the rest of the introductions. So James is working the far western sections. I'm right on our eastern boundary, following up on a report of the Birmingham boys who were a little bit further to the east last night, and hopefully they've come west and south towards us. So I will keep you updated. I am listening carefully to the Game Drive channel, and hopefully we do get some tracks here. But it is a bit of an overcast morning, as we can see. But I think, judging from the clouds, it is going to burn off. Sorry, my earpiece is just falling out here. I think it is going to burn off quite shortly, and hopefully we have some lions too, basking in the brilliant morning light a little later. So if we don't have any success as we are cruising along the eastern boundary, oh, there's some elephants up ahead and they're running at high speed. Let's go see what's happening there. Just saw a young elephant charge at very high speed across from Torchwood into Djuma, so we're going to go have a look there, what might have disturbed them. Didn't look very relaxed, so we are going to stop a little bit further away and see what's going on before we go right in there. That area, I saw that elephant dash across. Probably just beyond this termite mound on the left. Here we go. I think it might have just been a youngster playing. Got the rest of the herd here on the left. Going to stay a little bit further away from them to start. I just judge the reaction to the herd. That's possibly the reason why that youngster was running. And we've got a young elephant bull off to the right moving in towards us. And they can be a little bit full of nonsense around the edge of the breeding herds, and that's why the cows generally tend to push them off to the peripheries. I can hear quite a lot more elephants than we can see. Just roll forward a little bit. He does look like he's got a bit of attitude in his walk this morning. Very nice even tusks on that young bull. There we go, you can see he's got quite a bit of swagger, so to speak, in his step. He's walking straight towards us. I'm trying to see whether he is in must. It doesn't look like it. I think he just could be being a little bit full of nonsense. Hello, mister. Why are you harassing the ladies? Don't start with me. Yes, you just behave yourself. So you can see how close he is to us. And very important when you're this close to elephants to keep your voice nice and calm. Obviously, if he decides to start being naughty, I'll raise my voice a little bit. But now he sort of had to stop because he was expecting us to dash away from him because he's so big. And it's very important to just stay calm when you're this close to elephants. He almost looks a little bit sheepish now. There we go. We won the standoff. He's going to go on to harass someone else. I love that when they walk like that. It's almost the same, similar sort of walk to the water walk when they get excited as they head towards a drinking spot. There we go, there's a little Cape turtle dove on the ground. There we go. So there are elephants off to the right of him and to the left of him. I can just hear them. I can't really see the ones off to the right. Oh, I can just make one up. It's amazing how this, especially on a grey morning like this, that they disappear into the grey bush. I mean, Andrew, just come up to me here. Let's see if anyone can. You can just pick up the movement if we go straight along the line of my hand. And it's hard to believe that there is about a 4-ton female elephant right there, and we can't even see her through the bush. I'm just going to roll forward a little bit. A little bit easier to make her out there. So there you can just make out the movement and that little glimmer of white ivory. So the big bull, well, not too big, he's probably around 20 years old, but he's going to be a very big elephant. You can see how tall he is already. Almost looked like he was going to wander off to where that female was, but he stopped. So while we're sitting with these elephants, we've had a very interesting comment about one of my favorite elephants that we see regularly here, and I actually do have a slight suspicion that this might be the herd. I saw a female through the bush with very long tusks, very even tusks off to our left, and we definitely will have a look there now. But JJ says they're here only for one reason, and one reason only, for a wrinkly bottom sighting. Hopefully I can oblige, JJ. Let's just see. I think there's going to be, might be some interesting interaction with this young bull and some of the other females around here. This is a very big herd. And you can see there's a cow with a calf, and that bull's about to approach her now. And here we go, harassing them a little bit. And that's why I think when I saw that youngster sprinting across the road, it could be from harassment from this bigger bull. Let's roll forward a bit again. So this is actually a much bigger herd than I initially thought. They're very spread out. And you can see this poor female's looking a little bit harassed, and that's definitely from that bigger male. It's okay, madam. A nice little one with her. You can see the little guy just, and we can hear quite a few fork-tailed drongas chirping around. And he's lifting his nose, smelling us to see what we are. There you go. Mom's also giving us a good sniff. The periscope trunk that Eddies use very often when they're smelling things. So you do have to be sometimes a bit careful, especially if there's a young bull who's being quite boisterous around. It can upset the other elephants. And so far, I mean, she's alert. You can see her ears are out. She is smelling us, but no really untoward signs of aggression yet. Looks like quite a young mother, which also means she might be a little bit more alert and whatnot. Could be one of her first babies. And you can see she'd rather go a little bit further away from us, create a bit of distance and space. So in this situation, we stay right where we are. We're just going to let her pass. You can see her tail's up. It's another sign that she might be a little bit distressed. And you can see head up like that in front of us. And she's doing that oblique angle move away. So still keeping an eye on us, but creating distance between us and her. Well, that big bull, I think we're going to go have another look at now. Hanger's truck on his tusk. And Pear on Twitter is wondering, is this a sort of you better watch out strategy? No, Pear, I think it's more, oh, I don't know what to do now strategy. So if he wanted us to look out, he'd be lifting his head, making himself look bigger, possibly shaking his head at us, and just warning us that he's a big, strong animal and that we shouldn't try and mess with him. That was sort of more sort of displacement. He didn't really know what to do now, so he's like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and put my trunk on my tusk. Guys, I'm just going to come in here because I think this bull's going to harass a few more females around here, so we're not going to get too close, but we're going to stop where we can see, and I can already see one of the females is lifting her head at this young bull. So you can see there is a little bit of annoyance from this female to the left. As soon as that bull moves in, she tries to move away. Although he seems to be behaving himself at the moment and just having a schnack. Here we go. Hello, old lady. And again, you notice that very distinct displacement behavior, keeping an eye on us, but still walking off at a slightly oblique angle to create a little bit more distance. So I think in general this would be a very nice relaxed herd, but this young bull is causing them, you can see they try and move away quite quickly from him. Hello, little lady. So they're moving off in the general direction that the rest of the herd are. So we're going to have a quick closer look at this young boy, and then we'll go see if we can find the rest of the herd, and hopefully Mr. Wrinkly Bottom is with them. So when we first saw him, he definitely had quite a step to him, a bit of a swagger, and here there's a lot of comments about on Twitter and whatnot about his attitude this morning, and it seems though he's now more concerned about devouring a combretum or a bush willow, and he's left the ladies alone for a while. But he's got to an age now where he's big enough to push around the females quite a bit. Still not big enough to sort of push around a really big Ellie bull, but he is getting to that stage, and I think he is going to be a magnificent animal in about 5 or 6 years. So I initially thought he's around 20, he might be a little bit older, probably between 20 and 25. So 5 or 6 years he'll be at sort of full size, and I think he'll be quite a force to be reckoned with then. We've got lovely even ivory that should grow quite nicely. Now we've had some wonderful close encounters with Ellies this morning, and Joel from the Big Apple is wondering, we said, just commenting that he thinks possibly elephants are the most dangerous for the tour guides and rangers and the guests out here, more so than the big cats. Well, Joel, definitely I'd agree with you on that one. You have to be more careful with elephants. They are such big, strong animals, and it's very important to read their behavior and stay back a little bit sometimes. And fortunately, they will tell you how they feel with their body language, and a lot of the guides in this area have spent a lot of time with elephants. So by reading their body language, you know which herds to approach and which to not. And said, I think this herd would generally normally be a very relaxed herd. The reason they're a little bit jumpy and they're showing some of that displacement behavior and whatnot is because of this young guy. And you could see he was walking around and he sort of nudged one of the females with his tusks earlier, and they're trying to move away from him. But definitely the animal you have to have the most respect for. Not to say you mustn't respect the other animals, but just because of their pure massive size, you have to be a little bit more careful with them. And as we are in the dry season and there's not too much nice green tender grass around, the elephants will feed a lot more on trees and bark, and specifically the cambium layer of a lot of the trees. And that cambium layer is the layer that transport nutrients and water from the roots of the tree up into the rest of the tree. And so the elephants will spend a lot of time stripping bark off trees at this time of the year. So as you can see, the bush behind us is very grey and quite sparse, not many leaves around. A lot of these trees are deciduous, so it means they lose their leaves during the winter. And Anna Marie and some others have been commenting on that it does look very dry and there's not that much for them to eat. There is still quite, and Liz as well from Wisconsin, and they are discussing that on Twitter at the moment. And we can see that there is still quite a lot of food for elephants. It's just that they have to travel greater distances between it. We can see the sun trying to break through the clouds just to the left of him. So there's due east. And it's important for the bush. As elephants, as I mentioned, I think yesterday on the sunset safari, elephants are one of the architects of the bushveld, and they are able to open up areas, or by not feeding in areas, they will sort of let areas become more dense. And as we're going into a dry cycle now, I think the elephants are going to open up areas a bit more, and that is good for other animals like zebra and wildebeest. Obviously not so good for animals like Inyalo and bushbuck, but that's why the amazing thing about the African bushveld is it goes through cycles, and we have gone through a very wet cycle, so the bush is built up quite nicely, and now we're going to go through a dry cycle where it's going to thin out for a bit. We'll leave him to chew on his bush willow, and oh, we've got another, I can't see whether it's a bull or cow. We're definitely walking with a bit of attitude through here. Just going to stand by for a second. Just from the way it's walking, I think it could be another young bull. I can't really see it properly yet. I can just see the sort of movement. There to the left. You got him there, Andrew?
Nope.
Slightly, so zoom in a bit more. Left a bit. Left, there. Can't see whether it's a cow or a bull from here. And there's some youngsters there, so it could be a cow. Another section of the breeding herd. There's more than one elephant there. I can see 3 at the moment. But let's go check where I thought I saw Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's mother and see if we can find Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. Goodbye, big boy. So at this time of the year, sometimes the elephants can become a little bit stressed due to the lack of food or having to travel distances between feeding water. And William from Rhinelander, welcome William, was wondering if it's true that elephants sometimes false feed while watching you when under stress. William, not so much false feeding. They sort of, as I do a lot of sort of displacement, they might break a branch and that they wouldn't normally feed on. Just to pretend that they're doing something or kick the sand while they do watch you. So that is true. I wouldn't call it false feeding, and quite often if they relax in that situation, it will become, they will calm down and start feeding again. So I think the rest of the herd will have moved down onto Drakensberger Road, so we're going to go there, and I'm just going to call this in on the radio for the other game drives, just in case anyone else wants to have a look at some elephants a bit later. Just double checking the tracks there. Stations, large Thambia of Ndlov on Drakensberger junction with Hippo Pools, slowly mobile south. There we go, the rest of the herd popping out. Yeah, just as I had hoped. We don't need to go bashing and crashing after them. A little bit of a fright there, that little guy. And here's the elephant that looked Oh, hello. Yes. I see you. We have a little bit of a traffic jam now. I'm trying to get to the rest of the herd that are further to the south. There we go. Thank you. This is the elephant that did look a little bit like Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's mom, but as I can see, it's not. Her tusks aren't as even, but there's still quite a lot of elephants up ahead, so it's not to say this isn't part of the larger herd that Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's in. So let's go on a little bit. I can see more elephants on the road up ahead. Hello, elephants. There's another female with nice long straight tusks up ahead. It looks very similar to Wrinkly Bottom's mother, but these tusks look even longer. Really long straight tusks on this female. Perfect example of her. And you guys might have heard me mention the word olifant or oliphant, and that is the Afrikaans word for elephants. So I've got a question for all you guys out there. Who knows what the Shangaan name for an elephant is? Who knows what the Shangaan name for an elephant is? You can send your answers through via email to questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live if you're on Twitter. Beautiful, long, thin ivory on this cow. So as we have a look at this elephant walking away from us, you can see a very prominent backbone sticking out there, or the spinal ridge. And Kathy from Nebraska and Katie from Nevada are wondering whether that's to do, why some have such a prominent one and others don't, and wondering whether that's to do with a lack of food. Well, normally you start noticing it far more in older animals. In the younger animals, it's not as obvious. We're just going to sneak in a little bit closer while she destroys that weeping wattle. So back to that, you can see there, so in the older animals, as they you start to notice that sort of very much more noticeable spinal, and especially in bigger animals, but with the younger animals and that, it is less noticeable. They've still got a bit of growing to do, and also as they get much older, it is one of the signs that they are starting to lose condition. Could be on their last sets of teeth. So it's very seldom you'll see an elephant feed off a weeping wattle or Peltiforum africanum during the summer months. They're probably not the most nutrient-rich tree around, but they are very important being an evergreen during the dry season, and we'll see that the elephants do feed on them quite regularly at this time of the year. You can see here now, she's going to rotate that branch through her mouth to try to take off all the lovely bark and the cambium layer. You can see they don't really eat too many larger, or a lot of the bark that they pull off. They'll pull off some of the smaller branches that probably have a bit more nutrients in them that the trees are focusing on trying to grow, and they don't eat very much apart from that initial sort of bark thing, and then they'll just leave the rest down there. But unfortunately, I don't think this is Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's herd. This cow looks very similar, but she's not, I don't think, as big as Wrinkly Bottom's mother, and the tusks are quite a bit longer. And some nice soft morning light breaking through the clouds. With a nice cow with some long ivory, not quite as even, moving past the front of us here. There we go, coming through. I'm going to go have a chat with the other female. Here we go, a little tender hello between two adult females. You can see her smelling between the other female's legs. Might be checking if they're possibly in estrus. So we have it. There we go, going to head off to that Peltiforum. So while we're chatting and probably just, look at there, going to work on that Peltiforum. So as we were chatting about estrus, Virginia from Kentucky was wondering, when a female elephant is in estrus, will she mate with a single elephant bull or with multiple bulls? They will mate with multiple bulls during their estrus cycle, and the bulls will fight fiercely for that right. We got another question from Zai about how do you age an elephant. So I've got a really nice little diagram in my book that shows us from the young how to age them. Once they become adults, until they get really old, can be quite difficult to age them. But if we have a look up until their adult stage, a really nice little diagram here about how to age an elephant. And you can see an infant down there is about 1 year old, It can still fit under the mother's belly. And then, oh, there we go. A juvenile at about 2 years old, and sort of almost double the height, and the baby's back can sort of reach up to its mouth. And then an intermediate elephant, there we go, number C, at about 6 years old. And then B is almost sub-adult, sort of a teenager, 15, and then an adult. So probably with females from 20 onwards, or they do reach sexual maturity at around 15, 16, but they sometimes don't mate till they're a bit older. But there's a nice little thing. The way we just figure out how an elephant is older when it gets older is you'll start seeing depressions form on the skull, and that spinal ridge will start showing, and maybe a few ribs, and they'll start losing a bit of condition. And that's generally only when they're around 40, 45 on their last set of teeth. So these ellies are now heading off into quite a thick area with lots of drainage lines, and we've had such a wonderful view of them. I'm not going to harass them by bashing and crashing off the road with them. And I think Andrew and I are going to go back to our original plan to see if we can find any tracks of the Birmingham boys in the northeastern corner. But what a wonderful way to start this sunrise safari with Ellie's. So we're going to go across to Commander Bond so he can give you an update about what he's been scurrying about doing, and we'll see you a little later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga, where I have found a deeply sort of disturbing sight of a bleeding marula tree. Do you see the blood, Viam? What do you think did this?
Something big.
Yes, with horns perhaps? This is what... This has definitely been done by a buffalo, and the buffalo, you often see them, especially that big herd of bachelors, with a sort of red covering on the boss, and what they come and do is rub on the tree like that. It gets very itchy on top, possibly because of those horn moths, which don't normally sort of come out until the buffalo are dead, but I think that their larvae probably, or the eggs probably irritate the top of the skull or the top of the horns, and that's what's gone on there. So buffalo has come and ground his head away against the top of that tree and caused a great bleeding on the marula tree. Now that won't do any lasting damage to the tree, but it's just quite interesting to see, because often we see the buffalo with this kind of red covering on the top of the boss and we wonder what it is. Well, that's what it is. So I'm afraid the search for Karula has again resulted in my coming up empty-handed. I walked the area flat, I drove the area flat, and there was no sign of her. I think she's probably still around there, you know, but there's so many difficult drainage lines that we can't drive in there we can hardly drive in there at all. I have walked around in there, but haven't come up with anything. So I'm sorry about that. I hope that that doesn't leave any of you too devastated. I'm feeling slightly bereft that she has once again eluded me, but perhaps we'll come back here towards the end of the drive and see what we can find. We're going to carry on up here, head down towards a little open area called Impala Plains, and then probably just check what's going on in Arathusa, and that's basically the plan from here. I hope you're all having a marvelous morning. It is a very beautiful morning here, lovely and warm, not too sunny. So it's, regardless of Karula's sort of ghost-like qualities, it is a very great pleasure to be out here. Very quiet morning from a bird point of view, because I think of the cloud. They don't tend to sing too loudly when there's a bit of grey covering. But I would say that while we will definitely have one or two more cold snaps, the need for gloves and beanies and that sort of things are probably now over. And while we're driving along here, Marco, lovely question. Have I ever had an animal follow me while on safari? The young animals, Marco, quite often do follow us, especially young male leopards. I've had them kind of follow when I've been on foot, just curiously, not with any sort of malicious intent, and it's been, they're sort of my favorite. They often will do that. Young elephant bulls sometimes will follow the car. Then an elephant that is bent on sort of, if he's irritated, an elephant might try and track you, and that can be fairly terrifying. Thankfully it hasn't happened to me very often, but they can do that. If they're feeling irritated and they pick up your scent and they think maybe you're trying to follow them, then they can very easily track you. But no, nothing particularly hairy while on safari. Thanks, Marco. The kingfisher. Don't fly, don't fly, don't fly, don't fly. Oh, he's flown. Did you get him there, Vian? That is a striped kingfisher. Can you even see him? Oh, there he is. Yeah, striped kingfisher, everybody. And that is one of our smallest sort of woodland type kingfishers. We do get a couple of other smaller ones that live around the water. And that little fellow makes a lovely churring call. Distinctive of the sort of summer and spring. And he's also part of a group called the Halcyon kingfishers. Halcyon coming from the blue that's on his back. And I'll just show you a picture of the others. I'll show you the difference. So those are all the kingfishers there. Well, no, those are two of the kingfishers. We get both here. That's the giant and the pied. Neither of those are the Halcyon kingfishers. Then those are the Halcyon kingfishers. The woodland, the grey-headed, the mangrove, the brown-hooded, and the striped. Not these ones. And they're called the Halcyon kingfishers because, well, their genus is Halcyon, and because of this blue color under the wings. So that's the striped fellow that we saw just now, and that's the brown-hooded, which is the most common one that we get out here. They look quite similar, but for the fact that the striped is much smaller. And then shortly to return, in fact I can imagine him scudding through the drainage lines as we speak, like an F-16 on maneuver, is the woodland kingfisher, which is a very nice call after he arrives. He goes chip, starts in October. And by the time he leaves in April, the sound of his call is a little bit like having a dentist drilling into your skull. So strident is the incessant calling of the woodland kingfisher. It was very nice when he first arrives, because he does truly mean that summer's near, and my birthday is also near by the time he arrives. So that was the striped kingfisher. On we go. Reattach my ear. I think when you joined us there was quite a lot of bird song. There were a couple of babblers calling, and a grey-headed bushshrike, which makes a very sort of ghostly. How was that, William? William's looking pretty unimpressed, I have to tell you. And also a crested varmint or two. I always quite like these cloudy mornings because the light is diffused for that much longer. Around about this time of the year, before the rains come, the light gets very white and very hot very quickly. And that just means that it looks a bit burnt out, especially with the greyness that is the bush. So when there's a bit of cloud in the sky, it tends to yellow the light a bit, warm it, and make it look quite a lot prettier. It just gives everything a slightly golden sheen. So So now we're coming into the clearing, and the reason that it is clear here is because the soil type has changed slightly, and it just means that there's something that is holding clay in this area. And that's why there are a lot of wari bushes, which is the greenery that you can see around you now. And for the first time the other day, I mentioned that giraffe that helped Scott find shadow yesterday. For the first time, I saw that giraffe eat some of this guarri, and I've never seen anything eat the guarri before. And while we're driving along, thinking about breakfast perhaps, Liam is always thinking about breakfast. Liam, what is that? Is that a leopard track? Sorry. Do you mind just having a quick look?
It's on the floor.
Yeah, it is on the floor as opposed to flying.
Oh yeah, you know.
Okay. Old hyena track, sorry about that. While we're driving along, thinking about breakfast, Janet, nice question from you about fruit trees and how many different kinds of fruit trees do we get here. Janet, difficult to put a number on it, but the most obvious ones for us to eat are the guarri bush, make very nice red, sort of purple-like blackberries almost. Marula fruit, of course, very important source of fruit. The white berry bush, Flugia virosa, also very nice, sort of, they taste like sweet peas almost. And they'll come out, this all comes out in the summertime. And then another nice one, of course, is the sour plum, common sour plum, which is a big orange fruit, which when you bite into it is very sweet, and then it turns immediately sour. But what's interesting about lots of the fruit that we get out here, Janet, is that the pith is very shallow. So the seed is normally very large, and I suspect most fruits were originally like that until they were sort of selectively bred to make the big fruits that we commercially buy. So there's not a lot of fruit. You've got to eat a huge number of individuals in order to get a mouthful of actual pulp. But not much going on in the winter months. In fact, no, none. Driving along thinking about giraffe that we were talking about, and the elephants that Brent was seeing, you were saying, is it true that an elephant is able to reach higher than a giraffe? It is actually true, yes. Not all the time, but they can. A big bull can reach higher than a giraffe. So the tallest giraffe is about 4 meters tall, which is pretty tall really, but just over 12 feet, 12 or 13 feet. And then an elephant, certainly in places like Mana Pools where they're trying to get the pods of anna trees, they'll stand on their back legs and reach up higher than a giraffe can get. Yeah, so they can in fact reach higher than some giraffe, but you'd have to be a pretty big elephant. It is very amusing to see an elephant try and stand on his back feet, I must say. Lots of elephant tracks around here that are quite fresh. And Jim, I think I preempted your question there, Jim Butler, about whether the elephants will rear up on their hind legs. Yes, I mean, rear up sounds like quite a sort of horse-like activity, but they definitely do sort of pivot up onto their hind legs. And we've seen it happen here, not so much with the adults, but with that little wrinkly-bottomed calf. He likes to stand up on his back legs, which is very funny to see. But absolutely, Jim, they do that. fresh elephant tracks heading through this area. So perhaps I shall be lucky, or we shall be lucky. I'll just stop and have a little listen. Stop and have a listen, Liam. See what we can hear. Some rattling testiculars. Psst, 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 psst. Look over there. There's a roller killing something, whacking something on top of a little tree. There, you got it. What is it? Can you see what it is? I think it's a little frog.
What's or a mouse? Or a frog, yeah.
It's a little frog. What on earth? I think it is a little frog. Now the reason he'll be doing that, everybody, is that a frog will exude sort of toxins from the skin. Not any, in this area, nothing like they do in, say, South America, where you can get some pretty toxic frogs. Rubbing your arrowhead, for example, on these ones wouldn't do much damage. So what that roller is doing is banging away the toxins before he swallows it. Sort of cleaning off the carcass, if you like. Probably also smashes the bones, which is probably quite an easy. It's not a grey tree frog. Apparently that was one of the thoughts that it could be. It's much too small. Looks like a little sand toad, actually. That is fascinating. So he's beating it. Remember also that these birds don't have teeth. They do have a gizzard, which is a sort of muscular stomach, which they fill with stones, which helps them to sort of grind up what they eat. But the more broken up the bones can be by the time he swallows it, the better. Well, clearly not satisfied with the level of deadness that his prey is at the moment. Incredibly skillfully tossing it about there. This is wonderful. I'd love to get a bit closer, everybody, but I think that he would fly away very quickly. We could try, but I think we would disturb him, and unfortunately his little frog dinner will probably be dropped. But isn't it interesting how he's flipping it over and over? He knows exactly which pieces of it he still has to clean off. And I can actually hear it. I can hear the little slap. Shame, poor little frog. Saw a wonderful cartoon once of a frog in exactly the same situation. I'm sure many of you have seen it too, except it was with a heron, not a roller. And as the heron was about to swallow the frog had reached round and closed the heron's throat with his hands. The caption being, "Never give up." Well, I think that frog's probably well beyond that point. There we go. Come on, swallow it now. Can you hear it, yeah?
Yeah, well. Maybe he has bitten off more than he can chew.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the quality of that jape.
There you go.
There it goes. Can you imagine having to swallow that whole? That's why, everybody, you can see why the gizzard is such an important part of the bird's digestive system. So down, the frog is now stuck in his throat. but it'll go into that muscular stomach called the gizzard, and there'll be some stones in there, and they'll help grind up that frog for digestion. I don't think that that little bird is going to have to eat for the next little while. Wonderful sighting this is. Has he swallowed it yet?
No, feet still dangling from the mouth.
Feet still dangling. Go on, swallow. Now he can still regurgitate that, of course, should something decide that it wants to attack him. But once it goes down, I'm really glad we don't have to eat like that. Can you imagine having a fillet steak stuck halfway down your throat? I have had that situation, of course, but that's because I have bad table manners. And thank you, John, for your comment. You said lions are vicious, and you think perhaps this roller might be even more vicious. Well, at least he's not fighting with his. But he certainly would. That's hilarious. He just cannot get it down. I wonder if you actually swallow it, or if you bring it back up again. What do you think, Ron? And absolutely he is tenderizing that frog. Lovely comment. Although it is now tenderized, but perhaps not sufficiently. Now he will probably be a roller that sits quite a lot on that very perch, or perhaps the perch next to him is another dead tree, and there are a couple of exposed areas around here, and a roller hunts from a perch a bit like a drongo does, but as you can see there, I mean, the drongo wouldn't eat something like that. It would be a bit big. They hunt on the ground, so they will wait for something, a grasshopper or a frog or something like that, to walk around on the ground, and then the roller will leap down, grab it, and fly back up to a perch to eat it. Whereas a drongo, which will hunt from a similar kind of a perch, tends to hawk insects, so things that come up into the air, they'll nip down and grab quickly. They've got a sort of that special forked tail designed for amazing maneuverability in small spaces, whereas the roller is not quite so well designed for maneuverability. He's not making any progress with that frog, you know. It's as stuck in his throat as it was when he first tried to swallow it.
You could wait a few hours and then swallow the rest.
Yes. I don't think they can do that like a snake. It must be almost impossible to breathe. So we're looking at this roller eating a frog. It could, of course, be a toad. I think it probably is a small toad. And Heidi, you were asking, you're from Germany, and you want to know, do we get toads here? Yes, we do. We get some very beautiful toads here. In fact, this time of the year, before the rains, it's probably more likely that that's a toad than a frog. But we get lots of different kinds of toads and frogs. I'll try and find you a picture of the one that I think it is. While we wait for it to finally swallow its breakfast, I'll try and find you a picture of what kind of a toad I think it is. It's a very little one. So some of the common toads we get here are the eastern leopard toad, for example, and that is definitely not an eastern leopard toad. Eastern leopard toads are much larger. than that. So these are some of the things that we get here. So what I think it probably is either a little bushveld rain frog there, that little fellow there. You can see very short back legs, very short back legs, and I think that may well actually be what it was, perhaps not a toad. So I'm going to go with bushveld rain frog. I think that's probably what it was. But the other very small frogs that we get with small legs or small toads are, I wonder if this book actually even has a picture of it. There, the northern pygmy toad, number 4. He's a tiny little thing. He's only about that big. Oh, sorry, we need to quickly go across to a hyena that is about to have a drink with Brent. I will see you just now. Sorry about that.
Welcome back, everyone. Andrew and I found this hyena and it was walking towards Buffelshoek Dam, so we rushed ahead, and here we go. Very fat hyena having a drink and cooling off in the shallow muddy part on the eastern edge of the dam. Hyenas love water, and you'll often find them when in the hot months sleeping in pans, exactly like this one is doing here. And the reason it came to this top corner of the dam and not where the deeper sections are is that just in case there might be a crocodile. So it's a little bit safer there, more difficult for a crocodile to approach it sneakily. But when we saw it, looks like she was jogging towards the dam, so we rushed ahead. Definitely looks like she's had a good feed recently, very big tummy. I'm sure that nice cool muddy water will help her bring her temperature down. I'm going to just sneak a little bit closer and see how she's still testing the wind there with her nose. Don't want to disturb, so I'm staying a little bit far away and high, and not driving directly at the animal, but driving alongside, away from it, so a non-threatening sort of position. Hello. So you look quite comfortable then. Oh, spreading out the back legs, getting that fat belly, some nice cool mud. Trying to find a comfortable spot for that belly. Still very alert. It spotted a francolin walking down towards the water. So, quick look, and then over that. I've actually even seen hyenas fast asleep in a mud puddle like this, with a big full belly just resting, enjoying the cool water and the cool mud. Also give them a little bit of respite from flies. There we go, now we have a two-toned hyena. You can see that belly. So fortunately, I think that mud's quite smelly, but we're upwind of it, so we're not smelling any of the mud. And I think combined with how a hyena normally smells, it'd be quite a vile combination. We've got a little blacksmith plover and a 3-banded plover behind the hyena. Might take advantage of any little insects, whatnot, that might be disturbed by the hyena wading through the mud. You can see that almost perfect round circle there. That's probably from where a buffalo bull's been lying and made that sort of little pond that the hyena is now in the middle of. Well, there we go, a bit deeper than the initial puddle. So if we have a look at that hyena's ears and sort of lack of scars, Rena's made the comment that it's quite a young one. Rena, I'd agree. If we look at the ears especially, the flies haven't sort of bitten it to pieces, and there hasn't been, it doesn't look to be too many fighting scars on the face. Trying to find a deeper spot where it can get more of its body under the water. Digging up with a little bit of dirt for the back legs. Sufficiently cool. Very fat belly. Doesn't look like it's pregnant, just looks like it's had a good feed. Okay, well, let's move around. We'll try and stay with it as long as possible. So we had a look at that hyena drinking a little earlier before it decided to move, and it's jogging off now. Zai, welcome Zai, thanks for another question. Would like to know, do they drink like cats or dogs? I think they drink like hyenas, Zai, but probably more similar to dogs, just judging from the way they lap. So coming back in the exact same, going back the exact same direction when we first saw hyena coming from. Maybe there's a carcass there, so we will try stay with the hyena. They're really difficult to follow in comparison to sort of lions and leopards, because they move at quite a bit higher speed, and they have incredible stamina and disappearing into the thickets there. Lost sight. I'm going to try a loop around. So I'm not going to be able to stay with that hyena while it moves through that block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try guess where it's going, and I'm going to move around where the next road intersects that drainage line. So while we were with those elephants a little bit earlier, I asked you guys a question on what was the Shangaan name for an elephant, and it seems like lots of you got it right. And on Twitter it was, oh, hang on, sorry guys. I thought I saw that hyena still moving parallel to us, but on Twitter it was John, Angie, Suzanne, and on email it was Jordan, Raisa and MJ who got it right. Well done. It is in Ndlovu. So not in Ndlovu. Ndlovu is the Zulu, and the Zulu spelling, and Shangaan is in Ndlovu. So a little bit different, but pronounced very similarly. Andrew, where do you think this hyena is going? I know we haven't found the den for a while, so maybe heading back towards the den. Has gone into this massive block here. Guys, I'm gonna go stand by on top of this hill here, and sometimes we do have bad signal in this little dip here, so I'm not gonna go all the way in. I'm just gonna wait 5 or 6 minutes, see if the hyena pops out. Also gives us a chance to listen, to see if there's anything else about. So the hyena's general direction was down this thick area to our right here, but it could have obviously changed direction and headed further to the west. But we'll just spend a few minutes here waiting. So while you guys were with James, I believe Marco had a question for James. Has he ever had an animal follow him out of curiosity? And so I have as well, so I've got a little interesting story. I've actually been followed by hyenas out of curiosity while walking on foot, and by elephant, and by rhino, strangely enough, and then more out of a sort of get out of my area by buffalo bulls. I've had to climb a few termite mounds and trees to avoid them, but the animals do sometimes follow you out of curiosity. They're just wondering what you are, and certain circumstances when they're definitely sure you're not a threat, they can sometimes follow you out of curiosity. Actually, probably the most interesting one I've had follow me was on the reserve where my parents live, and I took my little brother walking into lions for the first time, and the big male lion followed us back to the vehicle for about 500 meters, but staying about 60-70 meters behind us, and that was a little bit scary, but still very interesting. He didn't show any sort of signs of aggression or stalking behavior, but he was just checking what we were and where we were going. And in that area, those lions aren't walked on foot as often as here in the Sabi Sands, so probably just a little bit of curiosity. It was also quite late in the afternoon, so he was getting moving, and we had parked next to one of the water holes when we started tracking them, so they came and actually drank at that water hole a little bit later. But that was very, very interesting. My little brother found it a little bit scary. We actually had been charged by him on foot earlier, so it was a bit of a fun. I love being charged by lions, but a lot of people consider me a little bit strange in that sort of area. It tends to get the adrenaline going. Really know you're alive when that big male lion goes at you. So on the subject of animals following you, Reese said she's never really heard of elephants following people, but have I ever had one follow me back to camp? Never back to camp. I have had them follow me for a short distance through the bush and whatnot, but never sort of extended periods for many kilometers back to camp. But not to say that it's impossible. Well, it looks like the hyena has changed its direction. We're going to have one quick look through here. If we don't see anything, we'll move on. So while we're sitting here listening to the bush and hoping for that hyena to pop out again, Terry from Santa Ana was wondering which is the easiest animal to hear at a distance, which is the hardest animal to hear at a distance. Well, Terry, easiest is probably male lions when they decide to vocalize, or lionesses when they decide to vocalize for territory. And you hear that roar echoing through the bushveld. And then from the other sort of animals, you do hear elephant quite easily when they're feeding. They can be very quiet, but you do hear them breaking branches and that. Probably the harder animals to hear, well, it's quite a difficult question. I assume we're talking about sort of your more high-profile species, not like impala, who are very difficult to hear unless they're rutting, or inyala or kudu, who only really hear them when they're alarm calling at something. But I'd say probably the hardest to hear is cheetah when they are doing their contact call. It's very soft and almost bird-like. It's almost like a bird-like chirp. And even those of you who were with us on a sunrise safari a while ago, it was the first time I saw cheetah and we heard them growling. Even their growl sounds more like a purr. It was not a very loud growl. And so I'd probably say cheetah is the hardest of the sort of high-profile species to hear. Leopard, we've all heard that wonderful rasping cough roar that they do. And wild dogs, when they get separated, make a wonderful sort of woo call, as it's a contact call between them, and sort of a woo, 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 woo. So you do hear them, and also when they're feeding, that exciting giggles almost around a kill. And also hyena, when they are calling or excited around a carcass, make very audible noises. So I think out of all those sort of predators and high-profile species, definitely cheetah is probably the hardest to hear. Okay, well, no sign of the hyena. We're going to meander on. We saw that wonderful young elephant bull who looks like he's going to be a monster in about 5 or 6 years. And Brenda from Pennsylvania was wondering, what is the biggest elephant I've seen? And Brenda, the biggest elephant I've seen actually had a name, and it's Mantinti, which means earrings in Zulu, and it was in a place called Tembe Elephant Park, which, according to the papers and stuff I've read, has the largest bodied elephants in Africa, and also some of the biggest tuskers in Africa. And it's on the border of South Africa and Mozambique. And it is a park owned by the Tembe royal family, a Zulu royal family. And there was a very famous elephant bull who passed away not that long ago called Isilo, who was the largest elephant bull in the world at the time. I didn't fortunately get to see him, but I did see one of the other up-and-coming big bulls in that area. And he was absolutely monstrous, about 4 meters at the shoulder, and had a really lovely set of ivory. Got some fantastic photographs of him while I was visiting Tembe Elephant Park, probably beginning of last year. But I haven't been down that while. I have seen some incredibly large elephants in the Kruger. When I worked in the eastern part of the Kruger, we used to get a monster bull who had one incredibly long tusk. But definitely the biggest elephants I've seen have been in Tembe. We're just checking around now, and we've checked a vast section of the eastern areas and no luck with any tracks. I heard recently that the Birminghams actually went further south and east, so away from our eastern boundary. We're on the northern eastern side, and so we're going to go check. There's this myriad of drainage lines that sometimes the leopards spend quite a bit of time in, so So we're just going to loop along here very slowly, see if there are any tracks. If we get no luck here, we're going to duck down towards the Mawachi drainage and check back around towards Juma Camp. So driving very slowly, keeping the engine revs low so I can hear in case there are any alarm calls out in the bush, or in case a leopard or a lion starts to start vocalizing. So out of the sort of predators and carnivore, there's only sort of two animals that like to have a spa day, as a lot of you guys are chatting about on Twitter, and that is obviously the hyenas, and they do it very regularly, and they really love lying in water and mud. And the other is the African wild dog. They also really enjoy a sort of cool down in a muddy puddle. But hyena actually go one step beyond, especially in the summer months when there's a lot of little pans and that around. They will actually, once they steal pieces of a carcass and whatnot from a leopard or from lion or even from a kill they made themselves, they will stash the meat in the water. And what this does is, not only does it keep it fresh, but I don't think that's their intention there. Their intention is to be quite selfish and keep it from the other hyenas. So by putting it in the water, it sort of ends the scent trail, and they will remember where it is, and you'll watch them go and actually put their heads completely underwater and grab up a carcass they might have stored in there a couple of days before, but they were too full to eat anymore. So they are hoarders as well as, so their spa is also their pantry, so to speak, and they do use that very often, especially in the summer months when there's a lot more puddles around. And it's heating up very quickly this morning. Sorry guys, there's just a spider web there. Let me see if I can grab it. There we go, I think I got it. Andrew's going to give the lens a quick dust because it is very dusty at the moment, so that fine little film of dust often lands on the lens, and we want to show you the best picture possible. So sorry about that little swipe through there. Oh, hello. We've popped into another herd of ellies here. And look who I can see. And let's have a quick look, but I think it is him. And I know quite a few of you were hoping we might find him this morning. And it looks like that is Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. I just had a quick look at the side. There are some others that do have the wrinkles, but not quite to the same degree as Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. Hopefully he'll turn side on for us now. So looking at that, I think it is Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. I can't say for sure just yet, but looking at how the size he is and whatnot, he's probably around a year old. He probably just still fit under his mom's belly, and he should be starting to show little tushes soon, those tiny little first tusks. and not quite as adept with his trunk as the others, so actually putting that branch in his mouth and trying to pull it. So we're with a particularly large group of eddies at the moment. And there we go. I think the wrinkles aren't big enough. What do you think, Andrew?
I'm not totally convinced.
Yeah, Andrew's also not totally convinced. And in that herd with Mr. Wrinkly Bottom, there are quite a few that do sort of display that sort of wrinkly skin, but not to the same degree. Yeah, I'm not convinced either, Andrew. We'll definitely have to stay here a bit longer and see if it is. There are quite a few other elephants spread out through the bush further to the north of us, so he might be with one of them. Oh yeah, just losing a layer. It's got quite warm quite quickly this morning. So we have seen that elephant with a particularly short trunk, and she's lost the edge of to a snare when she was younger. And Rhonda from Georgia was wondering if she came across a large herd like this, would she possibly join up with the herd? We've always seen her sort of by herself. Well, Rhonda, I have seen her with a much bigger group before, and it is possible that she would sometimes join up with these larger herds, especially if it was possibly one of the herds that is related to her. But at the moment, I think she's spending more time by herself because there's less competition with the feeding. And I think with that shortened trunk, obviously she is at a slight disadvantage, even though she looks in wonderful condition at the moment. So I think she possibly in the dry season might not spend as much time as she would in the wet season with another herd. I'm actually convinced this isn't Mr. Wrinkly Bottom. It's just one who's got a bit of wrinkles, but not quite the same. Nevertheless, a very cute little guy. We're very fortunately sitting next to some very relaxed elephants at the moment. But Brenda from Pennsylvania is wondering what would cause a herd of elephants to stampede, and how long would they stampede for, or is it just an urban or sort of a bush myth, one of those urban legends? Well, when the elephants can stampede, they can do it if they feel, normally if they feel under threat and very scared. Normally they stampede away from the danger, but they can sometimes stampede at the danger. And I have been chased by a herd of elephants, which you could probably consider stampeding, in northern Botswana and in southern Tanzania for well over 1 kilometer. But generally I've never seen them run at full speed further than that. let's move on up ahead a little and see if it is Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's group. At the moment I'm not convinced. I'm quite sure that's not Mr. Wrinkly Bottom now. We spend a little bit more time with him. Now elephants on the left, elephants on the right. I'm looking at all the young ones, trying to see if Mr. Wrinkly Bottom is possibly here. Definitely recognize this fellow to the left. That's the same bull we saw earlier this morning, so he's changed direction away from that other herd and come to join this herd. It wasn't Mr. Wrinkly Bottom, as Penny Pine noticed. Maybe we should call him Wrinkly Bottom number 2, according to Penny. And then Carol from Florida is wondering what causes such a skin condition or whatnot, a wrinkly bottom like that. Well, Carol, it's the same as some of us have dark skin, light skin. It's just a genetic difference in the ellies, and no skin is the same on the elephants like their tusks. So it's probably nothing serious. He's just got a slightly different set of genes to most elephants, and that's caused that sort of very distinct skin wrinkles. So we often on these drives sometimes hear that wonderful communication between elephants, that sort of deep rumble. And there's a lot of that rumbling that is too low for us to hear. And Joshua on Twitter was wondering, with elephant infants, do they have to learn how to communicate like humans do, or is it instinctual? I would say, Joshua, it's instinctual, and they can communicate from within minutes of birth, unlike us who spend a long time being cared for and are completely helpless by our mothers and fathers. The elephants are able to walk carefully, not carefully, walk within minutes of birth and that. So they're born with a far fuller set of skills than, say, a human baby or a lion or leopard baby. So I think that it would be instinctual, that communication. I don't think they'd have to learn. But it doesn't look like that this is Mr. Wrinkly Bottom's herd, and they are mostly in this thick drainage line down here. So we are going to continue on, see what else we can find. Bye-bye, elephants. As I said on the sunset safari a while ago, we are going to be seeing a lot of elephants as it gets dry with the limited water and food resources. So it's going to be wonderful as it gets drier. We're probably going to see more elephants. I'm very excited. I love spending time with ellies. So it seems Nebraska's wide awake and watching the live safaris. We have another question from Nebraska, from Wendy. Welcome, Wendy. And as we looked inside that little guy's mouth, she was wondering, when they get their first tusks and teeth does it hurt, like teething in human babies? It does, and they have been known to feed off certain, or try chew on certain branches to help with that, like terminalias or silver cluster leaves that have a slight sort of numbing effect or anesthetic effect, as well as common spike thorns, which is not a normal plant that they would eat in both circumstances, but if they do have a sore mouth from teething, they have been known to chew on those specific species. We've done now a big loop through this eastern area, and we're going to carry on round and through, and we are going to see what else we can find. In the meantime, we're going to cross across to Commander Bon, who has found a camouflaged animal that I'm sure you're all very excited to have a look at, and we'll see you a little later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga, where you find us in the midst of an impenetrable Guarri and Gymnosporia buxifolia thicket. That is what Viam is showing you now, Gymnosporia buxifolia, although that is not the main reason for us to being where we are. Indeed, there you will see a leopard. Thank goodness. I was starting to think I would never see another one, and that is the magnificent little Sindile, sweetly reclining in the shade of a Guarri bush, not too far from where he was seen yesterday, and it really is lovely to see him again after my little sojourn to the north of South Africa. Now, Jennifer, you were asking if he was still with Shadow. Well, clearly he isn't. I think Shadow is probably still in Arathusa. They did follow his tracks across here into this particular area, where he and his mum generally do like to spend quite a lot of time, it's actually incredible that we do see them, because this bush around here is incredibly thick. So very happy to have found young Sindile this morning. I will try and reposition just now, but we'll just have a quick look and see what he's going to do. He has been moving around quite a lot, and you can see he's not quite at typical cat sleep repose just yet. White belly, that's what I spotted when we were driving through here. Took us a little while to find him, I must say. Yeah, a little while, and about 500 Guarri bushes, 36 Combretum trees, 4 Terminalias, and 1 Gymnosporia. But there he is, very relaxed. And Viam was just saying to me, we do need to check on all the termite mounds, of course, because Shadow and Sindile do really enjoy sitting on termite mounds, probably because of the vantage that they offer. But you can imagine, if we didn't have any idea that he was in here, you wouldn't see him at all until you fell over him. Yeah, it gives you a really nice idea there of how well hidden he is. And even if he was bright pink, he'd still be pretty well hidden in there. What a very fascinating query. While we look at this leopard just lying there doing not much at all, and just before I reposition, Jim, you want to know, you said you saw, was he scent marking Shadow yesterday when they met up? Now, I wasn't there, of course, but I did see a bit of the footage, and I don't think he's scent marking his mum, no. I think absolutely there will be an element of that sort of head rubbing, you can see, which is indeed how they do mark, or certainly mark guarri bushes. They lift their heads and rub their heads in the guarri bushes. I think what you'll find is that they're probably rubbing their heads against each other, just to kind of, not so much scent marking, but perhaps to reaffirm the bond by reaffirming the pheromones that they each give off, which will make them smell very familiar to each other. I think in terms of, I don't know, was he actually spraying urine? If he was on his mum, I didn't see any evidence of that in the footage, but maybe I missed it. If he was doing that, it would certainly be so the first time I'd ever seen something like that. He will now, of course, he's just over a year old, he will start to spray because it'll be an instinctual thing. It won't be so much a territorial marking as almost a practice territorial marking. I'm trying to think of sort of a human equivalent. If you think of a young man, you know what it's like? It's like a teenager who suddenly decides that this is his room in the house. You know, when a kid suddenly decides that this is his space, this is his room, he's going to do with it like as he wants. He's going to make it as messy as he wants. And that normally happens around puberty. I know kids are pretty messy generally, but they don't necessarily identify a territory, which is now their room. And I think what you'll find is he has now got to that stage where puberty is not too far off. And so he will start to exhibit some of the characteristics of an adult male, but certainly it's not very serious scent marking. So Jim, I hope that gives you a vague answer as to what was going on. I wasn't there, so I think that's probably what was going on. Then I think I'm going to just quickly try and reposition around the other side of him. There's going to be quite a lot of noise. Viam might lose his teeth. Viam, I hope you don't lose your teeth.
Thanks, James.
They're they're pretty good teeth Viam's got. I'm going to try and reposition. Will be a little bit noisy. I'll do it as gently as possible. If these two leopards spend long enough in here, that worries will eventually be cleared. Turning rather nicely for us. There we go. There we go, that's beautiful. Perfect colour, little fella. So while we're watching this very sweet little scene, which again, so many people say this and I feel it, which makes you want to jump out the car and walk over to him and give him a cuddle. Not recommended. We were just talking about the head rubbing and reaffirming sort of scent and pheromonal scent, and I think it's an important one because we as human beings, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but some people, this is going to sound awful, but some people just smell wrong. Now that doesn't mean that they smell bad, they just smell wrong, you know what I mean? And some people just smell familiar, immediately familiar, and smell like home almost. And I'm sure your parents, when you were a little kid, they smelled like that. And sometimes you meet people who smell the same. And I think that a lot of that has to do, well, I mean, the very complex things that make people smell right or wrong to you. But that kind of familiarity is a pheromonal and hormonal thing that I'm sure the leopards and many of the other animals out here use far more than we do, even as human beings, because we're visually, you know, our visual cues are so much stronger than our olfactory ones. But an animal like this, which uses its olfactory senses or its nasal senses so much more readily, and they're so much more powerful than ours, that head rubbing is not just affection. I think there's quite a lot of olfactory sensory communication going on there. Time of the morning when everything is just starting to calm down from the expectance of the early dawn. That's what I'm starting to feel now. Lovely. So not too long from now we're going to swap to our summer times, or certainly a little bit more towards our summer times. And we'll go out half an hour earlier and in the morning and half an hour later in the evenings, and that'll just help us to spend a bit more time when, you know, sort of when the animals are the most active crepuscularly. Because now, in a month's time, at this time of the morning, it'll already be about 30 degrees. Beautiful little leopard. And so nice to have him on to ourselves. And I'm sure you saw him yesterday with his mum, probably a little bit taller than she is now, but very similarly sized. And just a quick recap for those who perhaps don't know, he's just over a year old, and he could go independent anywhere from 18 months to 2.5 years. As a male, I've seen males with their mums in their mother's territories up to 2.5 to 3 years. So, you know, he may be around for that long, but I suspect that I think that he'll probably move out within the next year or so. Just going to get into a little bit of a discussion about his size and his, you know, you can see he's obviously going to be an immensely strong animal, but that's not unusual. And actually someone in camp the other day was saying, is he unusually large? And then being surprised when I said, no, I don't think he is unusually large. And again, it's so interesting to me. We as human beings, our immediate reaction with a male cat is, he must be big. He must be big. He's gorgeous. He's, you know, he's kind of, we want to believe that he's bigger than the rest. Nobody ever says, wow, that's a tiny male leopard, or wow, that's a tiny male lion. Whenever they see a male, it's always, oof, that's an impressively large male lion, or that's a big male lion. For some reason, we associate size with impressiveness out here. I don't think he's especially large. His father, Mvula, is Tingana, sorry. And Tingana is a good sized male, but he's not vast. So just to go back to that, normally your immediate, people's first impression on seeing a male leopard or a male lion is, wow, that's a big animal. And on seeing a female, you can just hear a roller calling in the background there. On seeing a female, their immediate reaction is, oh, she's so beautiful, she's so pretty. And those are just seems to be, as human beings, the characteristics that we like to associate with males that impress us and females that impress us. Excuse the noise, that's just me taking my jersey off and Jiga's groaning chassis under the vast mass that I am putting on her. I suppose it is a little bit of a pity that we didn't find him earlier, because he'd probably have been doing a little bit more than he is now. A young leopard like this, of course, is not entirely without threat. And his major threat at the moment is something like another male, a big male leopard. Even his father would be something of a danger to him. And I mean, he's sitting right dead smack in the middle of the boundary between Tingana and Mvula's territories. And so his major threat at the moment would probably be from Mvula. If I know let Tingana is his father. Mvula, we don't know what he'd do if he came across this leopard, but most probably he would kill him. So that's a major threat here. And Jim Butler, you want to know what is the sort of major threat, or what are the most threatened young animals out here? So I guess the best way to answer that is to say, or to try and describe the animal that has the most, or the lowest growth rate, or lowest rate of, I'm getting totally tongue-tied here, lowest rate of a cub making it to maturity. So with these leopards, a young male leopard, I think you'll find the chances of him growing to become a territorial male are about 30%. But interestingly, young male lions tend to have about a 1 in 10% chance of making it to maturity. Sorry, I'm being attacked now by flies. So about 1 in 10 for lions, Jim. Of course, I mean, if we look at animals other than the sort of major big cats and those sort of animals that we look at, termites would have a terrible rate of success. So the alates, which are the flying termites, come out in massive profusion, hundreds of thousands of them, and possibly less than 0.5% of them will actually make it to making a termite mound. So termites, I guess, would have one of the worst sort of success rates to maturity. But of the big animals that we see, I think the cats certainly struggle the most. Wild dogs also. Hyenas probably the most successful because they have that strong clan structure and they're not as susceptible to diseases and other predators as wild dogs are. But I think that you would find a male lion, because of the threats from other male lions, because of the pride structures and the way that they have to fight for their own food. I think that you'll find a male lion is the animal that has the worst success rate of cub to territorial male. So that would be my guess, Jim. Great question. Lots of discussion to be had around it. Young Sindile is still in sweet repose, and I don't believe that he's going to be going a great distance today. He has moved, I believe, this morning, probably about 300 or 400 meters, but that's not very far at all. Just hear a few little birds around us, the birds of the mid-morning, white-browed scrub robins, a couple of blue waxbills going. A lark and the roller. Now while we're looking at this Beautiful leopard. You can hear the odd roller going wah, 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 wah in the background. And the Shangaan word for a roller is veve. And like many of the words for Shangaan, or Shangaan words for birds, veve is an onomatopoeic, and it comes from obviously the call. And they're starting to become more and more noisy the closer towards spring that we get. You think he lifted his head for my roller call then? Now he's being bugged almost as badly as I am by the flies. But he's also enjoying the peace of the morning almost as much as I am. So a lovely comment from Astralina. Oh, can you see the bird just above him? Sorry, Astralina, I will get back to this. She's the little bird shouting at him. It's a chagra, a black-crowned chagra. That's a psh. It's actually a brown-crowned chagra. That's what there it is. It's close by, probably about 3 feet. In the bush that is shading young Sindile. And that is a definite alarm call, basically saying, what are you doing here? Please go away. So Astralina, you say that there's some evidence of, or that Shadow, who is Sindile's mum, was mating with both Tingana and the Anderson male. Now, the reason I got a little bit tongue-tied when I said if he came across Mvula, the thing is that we don't know exactly if sort of multi-paternity is possible in leopards. It is possible in some other predators and some other carnivores. We don't know if it's possible in leopards. So, what we do know is that females will mate with multiple males, and this is a common mammal strategy, to confuse males into thinking that they have produced offspring, and what that does is that then protects the offspring from being killed. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that Mvula had mated with Shadow, that Tingana had mated with Shadow, and the Anderson male had mated with Shadow. So, yes, we think that Tingana is the father of young Sindile here, but because we don't really know exactly the mechanism by which fertilization takes place and how it all happens, I think it's entirely possible that we don't know who the father of this leopard is. And that's why the gathering of that dung for the DNA tests is so important, because that will reveal, I suspect, a number of fascinating things about what we have taken as gospel sort of truth before and perhaps are not true. So I suspect that he could be the Anderson male's son, he could be Tingana's son. I also think, and I say this because I think he's quite pale, that he could be Mvula's son. I think Mvula is quite a pale male leopard, and this is pure speculation. He's just not a very golden, he's quite a yellow leopard rather than a golden one, young Sindile. So who knows? But those DNA tests will eventually reveal these sorts of secrets to us. Very nice comment you made there, Astralina. Thank you. The other classic example of an animal that does precisely that is a bonobo. Now, a bonobo, for those of you who don't know, is basically a pygmy chimpanzee, a small chimpanzee that lives in West Africa. And a bonobo is the classic example of sort of confused parentage and confused fatherhood. Infanticide is, like I've said before, was a big thing. Look, his eyes are still quite blue. Infanticide is a huge thing with mammals, a huge cause of infant death, and the bonobos will mate with everybody. Youngsters, old, beautiful little blue eyes here. I will get back to my bonobo discussion. Lovely little fellow. So bonobos will mate with anyone, often same sex apparently, young and old, and what that does is that it means that no male ever knows whether he has fathered a youngster or not, and that completely reduces infanticide. Whereas the other end of the scale, if you look at lions coming into a territory like we've just seen with the Birmingham males, they know that they are not the fathers of those Styx cubs, and so their first action was to kill them. And one of the ways that evolution has reduced that has been to some species have reduced it, is to evolve this sort of multi-paternity strategy. And I think leopards are a little bit along that course. He could not possibly be more relaxed if he tried, could he? So just to clarify, the idea behind the dung collection is that all the people in the Sabi Sands who are driving around looking at magnificent leopards like this one are going to be gathering dung and sending it in to a study group. And Ellen, you want to know, surely they would need the dung of all the male leopards to be sure of paternity. Absolutely they would. So the idea is that eventually Tinganas, the Anderson males, and Mvula's dung would also be collected, along with Sindiles and Shadows and all the other leopards around here. And that would then give us a chance to be able to confirm or unconfirm, perhaps, or refute paternity of leopards like Sindile. It will also give us an idea as to whether all the females in the area are as related as we think they are. And I think that's pretty accurate. We pretty much know who's who around here. I'd say the paternity is going to be the most interesting thing, and especially we will be able to tell how much inbreeding there is, because the only male in this area who doesn't come from around this area is Tingana. He comes from way to the south, and he's been a real injection of new genetic material, which after a while is very necessary in a cat population. Just so completely at peace. And then, just while we look at or consider the age of Sindile, he's just over a year old. And Anna Marie, you want to know, can his mum get pregnant at any time from now? In theory, yes. But, you know, what will normally happen, Anna Marie, is that he will normally leave her territory before she gets pregnant again. Now, they have had records of an 8-month-old female going independent straight away. The males tend to take quite a lot longer. In theory, she could come into estrus again now, but I don't think she's going to until he is well on the way to sort of leaving. So the best example of that would be Quarantine and Kunuma, the two young males that were birthed to Kurula, the elusive spirit flying leopard, who I have failed to find in the last 3 days. She hasn't had more cubs yet, and they are now how old? Viam, they're almost 3, aren't they?
Approaching, yeah.
Yeah, approaching 3 years old, and she's not pregnant yet. They have left her territory, and they come in every so often, or Konuma seems to come in every so often, and so, she's not pregnant yet, so I think the chances of Shadow getting pregnant again now, or coming into estrus again, I think are very slim indeed. So Karula has been seen mating, of course. Whether she's pregnant or not, I'm not sure, but certainly, yeah, I think it's going to be a while before Shadow comes into estrus and is mates again. I think it's going to be a little whiley from now. Although she's shouting at him, of course, and Scott described an amazing sort of interaction that they had yesterday, where he was looking, or she was looking for him for a long time, calling, and then when she did eventually find him, she was sort of shouting at him and baring her teeth and seemed to be quite irritated. It may indicate that he's going to be spending more time on his own, but I don't think that she will come into estrus for the next year, but I might be wrong. On to Quarantine and Konuma, who those, perhaps some of you have never seen them, and I haven't ever seen Quarantine. I've seen Konuma, 2 almost 3-year-old male leopards who were born to Karula around this area, and they've just gone independent, and it'll be a year or so before they are able to take a territory. And Jennifer, you want to know if we hear about them. I haven't heard about Quarantine for a while. Konuma, yes, we actually saw him not too long ago, once at Buffelshoek Dam, and then he had a kudu kill just in the drainage line to the south of Gowrie Dam, and he looked in fine fettle and seemed to be fine, but they'll be quite nomadic at this stage of their lives. They'll want to avoid any conflict with other big male leopards, because that is still their major threat at the moment. And so, yeah, we don't hear too much about him, I must say. That's not to say they won't pop on now and again. And I have seen this before, where 2 males like that, one will stay quite close to his mum's territory for a while, and the other will disperse quite a distance. I think you'll find that Tingana was probably an example of that. Just again, you can see how they don't rest like lions. I'm beginning to wonder if I'll ever see a lion again, but they don't rest like lions, leopards. They'll sleep for a while, and the head always comes up to look. They're always listening. A lion will go fast asleep when you can almost walk past them without waking them up. You'd never be able to do that with a leopard. And they obviously just have to be that much more aware because they're that much smaller. Another thing to note in that picture that you've got there is pink nose. And unlike the lions, the leopard's noses don't necessarily get darker as they get older. So some of them will stay pink and some of them will go dark very quickly. He's got a very sweet little pink nose. And one of the difficulties, Jennifer, just going back to your question about Quarantine and Konuma, one of the difficulties of knowing where they are is that not everybody can identify them, A, and B, not everybody is sort of paying attention, like so many of our great viewers, to exactly what they look like and how they're identified and that sort of thing. So let's say he pitches up somewhere in the Manileti where there are not many safari lodges, there are 2 or 3, and if Quarantine or Konuma pitch up there, would they recognize him? Would they know where he came from? Would they be able to track where he came from? Who knows? I don't know. I think the chances are fairly small. And then, I think what does happen a lot in this area, especially with males that disperse and females that disperse, is that when a new male or female arrives in an area, we immediately try and decide who it is, as if we must know, as if it must have come from some female, that we knew. So maybe if another male came into this area and disappeared and came back, maybe we'd think it was quarantine. I think we'd be able to identify him, but you can see how that situation might arise in an area where they don't have such a good handle on what leopards are what. And so there can be misidentification. And that, again, is doubly why that DNA study is so important. So, very nice comment from Ellen, Ellen is one of our most adept leopard followers, and you say that Quarantine and Kunuma were found sharing a kill on Nkoro, which is not far from here, just the other day. So that's where they are. So we don't need to worry too much about them at the moment. And we're just going to pop across to Brent and see what else he's got. No doubt something interesting, and I'll probably hang around here for a bit longer and see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. Having a great time with James and a flat Sindile. We have been in search of Madam Karula, who is giving all of us quite a hard time in the tracking department at the moment. And I've just walked through this myriad of drainage lines to the east of me here, and still no sign. But I'm confident she's still in the area. We thought she might have had a kill around. I mean, we found her on foot yesterday, but in these drainage lines where we can't get a car. So we'll definitely keep checking this area. I don't think she's going to come out this morning, so we might head a little bit further to the west and see if there's anything happening that side. And Scotty's been off on foot looking for the hyena den. No luck there yet, but hopefully we will be able to find the new hyena den in the not too distant future. And as it gets warmer, starting to roll up my sleeves. Quite a lot of hyena tracks on the road in the area, but no leopard tracks just yet. So we're all sort of wondering where the hyenas might have denned, and everyone's got their own little theories. It's more than likely not to be more than 1 kilometer or 2 from the current 3 dens that we know about, 2 that are used very regularly and 1 not so much. So that's where Scotty's working, in that area. It is possible they might have moved a little bit further out of that area, as I said, not more than 1 kilometer or 2, and hopefully we are able to find them. I don't have any theories exactly where they might have gone yet. I'm going to wait a few more days before I throw my hat into the pool about where the hyenas might be, check the road, see where there's a lot of activity in terms of tracks, fresh latrines, things like that, before I sort of make up my mind exactly where the hyena den might have moved to. I've just been walking through that myriad of drainage lines, or dongas. Donga is a very South African word. Jim from California is wondering what drainage lines are. Well, Jim, they're basically washers, I think you might call them in the States, where water flows during the rainy season, but it doesn't flow all year round. So it's sort of little streams, but they're dry for the majority of the year and they'll only flow when it rains quite a lot. Areas of erosion. They're generally formed on the divide between two different soil types, so where there's the least resistance for the water to flow through. And in that little area where we are there is obviously quite the conjunction of many different soil types, and so you've got probably about 14 or 15 of those little drainage lines, some of them very deep, sort of 10-12 foot deep, and very narrow, others wider with a sandy bottom. And those are all the sort of headwaters of the Mulwati, which is that sort of dry riverbed that we drive down sometimes. This is sort of where it starts, so it's right up in the sort of source of the Mulwati. Lots of, generally a bit thicker around there, and you get a few evergreen trees growing on the edge, so a really good spot for a leopard to spend its time. Nice cool area, it can lie in the cool sand or under those lovely evergreen bushes and trees. Freewheel down the hill. I thought I saw some tracks there. There are tracks, but they're not the tracks we're looking for. Can you see them there, Andrew? There we go. Hyena tracks disappearing to the north into Buffelshoek, Hook, up a nice prominent game path. I know you guys have been having fantastic sighting with young Cindy on its back, showing that sort of white fluffy underbelly. And Terry on Twitter is wondering, there's quite a few animals, leopards, even lions, impala, that have this lighter underbelly advantage. The only thing I can think of possibly, and I might be completely wrong, and I am venturing a guess here, is that it could be for heat, the loss of heat. And obviously white doesn't attract as much heat as black, so if you had a black belly it could become very warm, and white maybe will let go of some of the heat. But I'm not 100% sure. If any of you guys can get any on the interwebs, I would much appreciate it. Why certain animals have a white belly, is there any advantage or evolutionary advantage to this? And you can send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv on email. You can use the hashtag
Hello everybody, sorry about the crash cut there. Well, the good news is Sindile has moved. The bad news is of course that he's moved into a thicket, the likes of which I think it would be difficult to dynamite out of the place, as Viam suggested we try and do. I had to tell him that was not going to happen. That's an unacceptable plan. I'm going to sneak very slightly forward and see if we can't get a slightly better view of his more than one spot and an ear in this thicket. So hold on. I am basically parked on another thicket. What I don't want to do is make things unpleasant for young Sindile. I think that's probably about as good as we're going to get, Viam. I can go back a bit. Forward. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's about it until he moves. magnificent fella. And you can just see his head there. I know it's kind of obscured by a couple of trees. So I believe just before you came from Brent, you were discussing why so many animals seem to have white underbellies. And there are a number of reasons for it. For a leopard like this, I'm not particularly sure. But I'll tell you what the best example of a white underbellied animal is something, and it's a long discussion to have. I'll give you the short version, unless you're particularly interested. I don't want to put Viam to sleep, he'll fall off the back of the car. But basically, if you look at something like a springbok, which is a gazelle and the national animal or national mammal of South Africa, the springbok has a number of interesting color adaptations, and they're almost like an impala. You can look them up on the internet there, look at a picture, and they have a white underbelly, and they normally live in very hot desert areas where, of course, heat balance becomes an enormously important part of life. And to have a white underbelly is an advantage, because what it does is it reflects the heat that radiates off the earth and perhaps would heat the underside of a darker animal. That white underbelly reflects that heat away, and so it keeps part of the pelage cool. Now, the reason they're not white all over, of course, is that would make them extremely obvious to predators. So they can't be white all over. Now, if you look at a leopard and quite a few other animals, a white belly, especially for animals A, close to the ground, and B, that are a bit smaller, tends to be the norm. And I suspect it's got something to do with heat balance. And the only other reason I can think of any kind of white or black even would be some kind of communication device. And I don't believe that the leopard necessarily uses its belly for communication too much. So I think it probably has something to do with heat balance. You'll note that the fur on the stomach of the leopard there is very thick, and much thicker than it would be on the back. And I suspect maybe that it's white like that because it is thick, and by being white, it does tend to reflect more heat than it would if it was black. So that would be my answer. I'm not sure if it's necessarily true, but certainly, animals out here, certainly in hot areas, you must remember that we as human beings have, with our upright stance, are ideally adapted to heat. It may not feel like it at times, but we're actually better adapted to heat and water loss than many other mammals in the world. And if you look at an animal like a springbok or an impala is called a bit like a springbok. They've also got a fairly pale underbelly. They are always orientated more towards the sun than we are. So because they are not standing upright, more of their surface area is exposed to the sun than it is for a bipedal mammal like us. And what that means is that their exposure to radiant heat is obviously that much greater than it would be for us. And so that's why so many mammals are active dawn and dusk when they can see and it's a bit cooler than they are in the middle of the day. And we, our evolutionary ancestors as human beings, are a notable exception. We were often much more active during the middle of the day as scavengers rather than hunters, and we managed to do that because we could stand upright. And so we were far less exposed to the heat than some of the other animals. So in a nutshell, that I think is why there are white bellies around here. I hope that gives you some kind of clarity. If not, I'm very sorry. Please feel free to send through further questions on the topic. cleaning himself gently in the shade. A couple of other birds calling off. You can hear some pearl-spotted owls. So just a little recap about what happened yesterday and what was going on yesterday. Obviously, Shadow came through. She eventually found Sindile and shouted at him and yelled at him and was generally fairly unpleasant at times to him. But then they seemed to make up, which was nice. And Blair, you want to know, are they in the same area? Has she left him in the same area and gone off hunting? They are in a similar area to where they were left yesterday. He's come a bit further east, actually, towards where he was first found, or towards where she was first found. So, yes, they are in a very similar area. I would say he's probably 300 meters as the crow flies from where he was yesterday evening when he was left. So that's about 900 feet. So not too far at all, maybe even less than that. So he'll be around here. He will, of course, now start to wander a bit more, now that he's a little bit older. And that's perhaps why she was so irritated with him, but who knows? We really can't tell. And I believe you also saw this little fellow with a francolin yesterday. Now that's perhaps well, I think he's making quite a few kills on his own, but we've also seen him with a dead dwarf mongoose before. And Brenda in Pennsylvania, where I don't think the leopard population is particularly high, thank you for your question. You would like to know, is a francolin easy to catch? No, a francolin is not easy to catch. I've tried to catch many in my time and failed every time. They're not particularly easy. Nothing out here is easy to catch. And you want to know, will he carry on doing that into adulthood? Will he keep eating them? Brenda, the answer is absolutely he will. Leopards have an extremely Catholic diet, so they'll eat just about anything that they can. From lizards to frogs to francolins to dwarf mongoose, obviously. Domestic dogs are a particular favorite in some areas, and then right up to, of course, wildebeest size, or there is a record of a male leopard killing a giraffe. But they will eat whatever they can. They're completely opportunistic about what they eat, and I suspect while we do see Shadow, for example, is a nice example, very accomplished huntress, she does go off and hunt steenbok and duiker and impala and that sort of thing. I suspect she probably nails more francolins than we know about, and likewise he will do the same. I've never seen this leopard thin. I've never come across him and thought, gee whiz, he's looking a bit skinny and hungry, which the cats, if they're hungry, they're just thin. I think that he is regularly killing a few things on his own. Francolins, as we've seen, dwarf mongoose, he's probably picking up the odd lizard, perhaps even the odd bushveld rain frog like that Roller was eating. So he's just not thin. He may have even killed a steenbok or two on his own, who knows. So he'll carry on doing that into adulthood. Yes, probably the ratio of large prey to small stringy francolins will change, but he certainly will take them all. Thanks, Brenda. That's a nice question. we watch young Sindile there scratching, you can see perhaps some of the muscle definition on his back legs and in his shoulders. And Sibusiso, you want to know about them chasing versus stalking and pouncing. And they are ideally adapted, Sibusiso. They don't chase like a hyena does or like a cheetah. They're adapted to a very short, very fast sort of 10 or 20 meter sprint and then pounce. And their muscles are such that they are basically designed to wrestle whatever they have to the ground and then kill it quite quickly. Completely unlike a hyena, which is adapted to coursing or chasing. A wild dog's the best example of a courser, or a cheetah is also a very good courser. And to course means to run a great distance, or to chase something down over a distance, basically to exhaust it. And that's what the cheetah and the wild dog and the hyena do, whereas leopards rely on stealth and pouncing. So Sibusiso, nice question. And you can see the courses are designed very differently. Leopards are stocky, sort of built for very short bursts of speed and then wrestling, whereas the courses are much more slight, like a cheetah. A cheetah is a very slightly built animal, and so is a wild dog. While they're strong, they're certainly not pound for pound anything like as strong as a leopard is. So they're completely designed for pouncing. Sibusiso, very nice question. And lions are very similar, you know. Although lions have been recorded on pretty long chases, especially where the ground is open and they can see what's going on, and they can perhaps pick out an animal that's looking a little bit weak or sick. They will chase probably longer than leopards do. But leopard, if you can get away from a leopard in the first 20 or 30 meters, 20 meters, you've probably got away. But you must understand how astonishingly fast they are over those first 10 or 20 meters. And you can see how difficult they are to pick out in bush like this. And so when they are on the stalk and you happen to be in their target view, for example, you better watch out. They're not particularly successful. I mean, compared with something like a wild dog, which has a 70% success rate on killing, lions probably 1 in 10, and these guys, I wouldn't say, were somewhere between 1 in 10 and 3 in 10 times. They'll actually, every time that, when they attack, they'll actually manage to kill something. But again, for a leopard, the big thing is that they can eat just about anything. Any piece of flesh will be perfectly acceptable to them. From spiders to fish to lizards, and of course to francolins and bigger game. I've actually seen, and Brent saw the same thing the other day, leopard being chased by, or leopard chasing cheetah. And you think of leopards as very fast, but as soon as you see them next to a cheetah and how the cheetah hardly makes any effort at all to get away from them, you just see how amazingly quick they are. I'll tell you what we're going to do, everybody. I'm going to try and reposition so we can get a slightly better view of Sindile. If I can't get into a better position than this, then we're going to probably head out of here. But while I'm doing it, while I'm trying to maneuver through this fairly impenetrable thicket around us, well, it doesn't look that impenetrable in front of us, but to get any closer or around Sindile it is quite. And I don't want to disturb him. Then we're going to go across to Brent and see what he's found, and have a chat to him. I've no doubt he'll have something interesting to tell you. And if I can't get in here, then I'm going to probably pull out of the sighting, but it has been a wonderful sighting of him. I'll see you in just a little while.
Welcome back, everyone. While James just moves to get you a better view of Sindile, we're going to join Andrew and I for a little bit. We continued searching that area around where Kruger was last seen. Unfortunately, no tracks. So So now we're just having a little bumble. I couldn't help myself. I had to go past where we saw the serval very briefly yesterday evening. Unfortunately, no luck. And now I'm probably going to meander down towards the treehouse waterhole and see if there's anything around there. Hopefully we find some tracks. We have done the majority of Djuma today, and we've seen a lot of elephant and a lot of elephant tracks, but that's about it so far. No kitty cats. Update on the Birminghams. They are 2 are on Torchwood and 3 are on Buffalo's Hook, but very close to each other on the boundary between those 2 properties, and about 100 meters from the Kruger National Park boundary. And they caught a baby buffalo last night, and it seems like they finished that whole thing before the drives were even out this morning. So they are fat and happy lions, and probably not going to move too much during the day today. I think it's going to be quite a hot day, so if they do move back towards us, it's going to be probably after the sunset safari this evening. So tomorrow morning might be a good time to look for those Birminghams. So before the gremlins invaded Andrew and I a bit earlier, we were discussing the white underbelly in animals, and Chris from TA was wondering whether it could be a possible follow me sign, like the black tip or white tip to certain animals' tails, or like the circle around a waterbuck's bottom. Chris, I don't think so. I think it is probably more to do with the release of heat. It's very unlikely that most of the time that is not very visible, only when the animals are lying down, and even then they have to be sort of lying on their sides or on their backs. I think it's more to do with the release of heat than it is to do with any sort of follow me signs or anything like that. But it would be very interesting, and we must always remember we don't know nearly as much as we think we do, and the animals can prove us wrong on a daily basis, even on an hourly and minutely basis. And we wrote the textbooks, the animals didn't read them, and they can do whatever they want depending on the situation. We're about to meander down towards, we're just going down Philemon's Dip, and then we're going to head slightly more south down towards the waterhole at Treehouse and see if there's anything around there. So we were testing out new equipment last night to see if we can prolong the night safaris a little bit, and Jennifer from Santon is wondering, do we still have the equipment for the live walks, or is that not something we're going to be doing? Jennifer, we do have the equipment, and the live walks will be starting again soon. It is not something we're going to do every day, but definitely will be becoming a more common part of what we're doing out here. So don't worry, the walks will be coming back quite soon, and we still have the equipment. Still a bit of tweaking going on to try and make sure that equipment is perfect before we launch into fully live walks regularly. Seems even the zebras are away today. So James has managed to put himself in a better spot with young Sindile, so we're going to cross back to him, and we're going to go check out what's happening at Treehouse.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga and Sindile, who has repositioned himself very neatly in the lee of a fallen knobthorn tree, probably so placed by an elephant a little while back, quite a long while back, given the number of gwarries there are growing about it. And he seems to be very relaxed. He's also browsing a little bit. I think he's actually showing signs of what I would say was boredom. so sweet. Not very nice, are they, Sindila? I've tried them myself. They taste pretty foul. Yes. They also dry my mouth out. Tap, 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 tap. You can just hear a sort of delivery van going past on the major road that we're not too far from. I mean, within the reserve, of course, delivering some kind of food to the lodges. Many lodges around here, and so many of them created basically on the back end of viewing this magnificent animal, Panthera pardus, or the African leopard. And somebody else in camp was asking, I think it was Tara, about his eyes the other day and whether they were still blue. And you can see they definitely still have a tinge of blue in them, but they're certainly not very blue anymore. Oh, that's wonderful. He thinks it's going to be comfortable, but I don't think it is. He's very sweet. Fast asleep. So I'll just give you a little bit of a sensory update of what's going on around here. It's now probably pushing 24 or 5 degrees. In the sun it's a bit hotter, but there's still a relatively cool breeze blowing through here. The robins are calling. There are a couple of chin spot batises going. 1 or 2 francolins fossicking about the place. And there's a lovely kind of calm that has descended over the bush, and you can see that he's feeling that completely. Little sunbird calling in the distance. A white-bellied sunbird, Africa's equivalent of the hummingbird. And a very pleasant, cool breeze coming out of the north. And you can see as he's found himself a beautiful place to snooze, so his camouflage is an excellent way for him to sleep in relative peace. Although I tell you what, walking through here, that white belly would be pretty obvious. That would be the first thing you'd notice. You can even see there in the picture that his face is much more cleverly hidden in the dappled light of that quarry bush compared with his belly. Such a sweet little fellow. I also wonder at what stage we will stop describing him as cute and sweet, because I don't think anybody's ever described Mvula and Tingana like that. You know, they just tend to be much more, they don't give off that impression. They're magnificent, but they're not cute or sweet anymore, I don't think. And this chap's still got such playfulness about him. Crested barbet. And then you can hear the roller again, the veve. Quack, 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 quack. Every so often, there's a little subtle smell on the wind of a knobthorn flower. They will start to flower very, very soon. So, while we take a last few glimpses of young Sindile here, Wild Dog Pup, you asked an interesting question. You say you were in Zambia and your guide told you that, let me try and get this right, that impala are dark on top, lighter on the sides, and then white on the belly to help them, I think, blend in easier into the shade. Is that the question? Yes, I think that's definitely got an element to it. But I think that white color has a huge heat balance implication, and certainly the darkness on top the darkness on top is a very good way for them to be hidden in the shade. But now what I want you to do, Wild Dog Pup, next time we see an elephant or a waterbuck or a duiker, just look at how brilliantly that grey color that they have blends into this winter bush, compared with an impala or a steenbok, which, when the bush is like this, which is, is for 3 or 4 months of the year, and it's at the time of the year when there's the least to hide behind. I've only just thought of this now. I think that red chestnut, beautiful chestnut color that impala and steenbok have, I'm just wondering why they are that color and rather than gray, because in this kind of vegetation where there is the least to hide behind, it's not nearly as effective, to my mind, as something like grey would be. So that's quite an interesting one. Thanks, Wild Dog Pup. He's settling in for the long haul, this little fella. We're just going to nip across to Brent quickly for him to wrap up and say bye. We're going to stay here for a little bit longer with Sindile, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. It's coming to that time in the safari where we're going to be saying adieu. So from myself and Andrew here on Wendy, it's been wonderful having you out on safari with us, the sunrise safari, and please do join us again for the sunset safari, and we really do appreciate all your questions and comments that you send in. Thank you again very much for that. So from Andrew and myself, you won't be seeing me on the sunset safari, you'll be seeing Scott and James, and I'll be back on the sunrise safari. What a wonderful morning with those ellies, and hopefully we do manage to find Mr. Wrinkly Bottom in the next couple of days. I'd really like to catch up with him after being away for a while. So always great to spend time with ellies, and we are going to be seeing quite a lot more ellies as the dry season progresses and they're forced to move bigger distances between water and food. And hopefully over the evening those Birmingham boys decide to come back to visit. So it's been really, really wonderful, and I'm sure there's going to be lots out there on the sunset safari for us to have a look at. I'll be out tracking, but for now, have a wonderful morning or evening wherever you might be, and we'll see you later.
Hi everybody, welcome back. That's not Sindile in my hand. That is a small spider that I found that looks like a squid. I don't know anything else about it other than it looks like a squid, but it has 8 legs and therefore definitely isn't a squid. The other reason I know it's a squid is why, Leon?
Under the water?
Exactly, we're not at the sea. Good point. Right, so we'll just have a quick look again at Sindila, who is immobile, as all cats should be at this time of the day. Resting gently in the shade as he is. So an interesting one from Ramey just before we wrap up. Do male leopards seek to kill young leopards, or do they just kill them if they come across them? Ramey, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, they will seek to mate, of course, as often as possible, and the more youngsters there are around, the smaller their chances of mating are. Because, of course, well, I mean, this is assuming that it's not their cubs that are around the place. So if they become aware that there is a female in their territory and perhaps she has cubs, they will absolutely seek the cubs out. Probably not as actively as the lions do, but definitely there will be an element of seeking the cubs out. So, everybody, it has been a magnificent morning. I'm so pleased to have found a leopard finally, after I was beginning to wonder if I'd ever see another one. It's been a few quiet drives, but then wonderful, subtle, sort of quiet time here with Sindila in the bush. A big thank you to Viam on camera, who's been very patient with me. He's only eaten 3 bananas this morning. How many bananas? Only 1 banana this morning. He's looking ravenous, in fact. So I'm not sure we'll get home before he has to stop and eat something else. A big thank you to Brent, of course, and Andrew on the other vehicle. And back in the hot seat, Nikki Austin with Tara sitting next to her, and a couple of people coming in today to help out as well. Also, we must not forget the great genius of Eugenius, and Peter Braat is also around helping Eugene with some of the technical stuff. And mostly, of course, a big thank you to all of you for your wonderful questions and comments. You really do spark some very lively debate and some interesting stuff that makes me think and makes me have to rush back and try and read up on some of the questions you ask. So thank you so much for those. We're going to leave you now, and we'll see you hopefully this afternoon, wherever you happen to find yourself on our magnificent blue planet. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.